Gracias. Buenos días. That is the end of my Spanish. Yo estudié para 7 años en escuela, but I forgot everything. So thank you to the translators. I need to be closer. I'm also very bad at this. I am very appreciative to be here and somewhat overwhelmed because I know the quality of the people who are here. I was co-director of the Library Innovation Lab for 5 years, and I know one particular side of libraries, and I'm going to talk about it. But I also know that I don't know most of what I should know about libraries. So, I was asked to talk about library evolution or revolution, and I'm going to sort of, I should not stand here. These are very basic lessons for, thank you very much. I will stand here and allow it. I have talked before. I know it's hard to believe. So, I was asked to talk about libraries, evolution or revolution, and I'll get around to that at the end, and I'm going to say, not exactly either, but I want to get there by talking about how we can use technology to increase the value of libraries. Because we all know that libraries, whether they're university or public, are under a great deal of stress, financial stress, and one of the ways of helping to alleviate that stress is to be great to get more money. It would be great to be able to be more efficient. Everybody's in favor of both those things. But it would also be really helpful to be able to show just how much value the libraries bring their communities and even to increase that value. So that's what I want to talk about. It's not just the libraries that are at issue. It's the culture that we've entrusted to libraries that is so central to all of our cultures. So if you go on the net now, you will find unbelievable resources for searching. You will find amazing encyclopedias beyond anything that we had imagined 15 years ago was even possible. If you want to know about movies, you can instantly get any question answered. If you want to know about sports, any question answered. If you want to know about superheroes, you can spend the rest of your life browsing on superhero information. But if you want to know about the culture that libraries represent, it's a black hole. Of course, there's a great deal of information about books and all the rest of the objects of culture that libraries take care of for us. But it's hard to find. There isn't a single place that you can go to if you have a question. You have to know how to do things. It is nowhere near, library culture is nowhere near as present and as accessible as superhero culture. Well, library culture is pretty important, so we need to address this because I think and I hope that we all agree that the medium of culture is becoming, in many ways, has already become the internet. So if we lose library culture from the internet, we have simply lost library culture. It will come to an end. So we must, in my view, address this. And I don't know exactly how to do this. I'm sorry. The right thing to say, like what I should say is that here's how to do it. I don't know how we do it. But I'm going to talk about some of the ways that we explored when I was co-directing the library innovation. So, it's on the web that we find a connection of ideas, completely apparent, and a connection of people, and that's exactly what culture is about. As we all know, it's not simply a set of objects that are stuck in a museum or on a shelf. It is a network. It's the way that things connect. So even though we all think about reading, I think everybody thinks about reading as a solitary activity, which is fine, that's good. We also know that we want the objects that are being read or the other objects of libraries. For simplicity, I'll talk about books more than anything else. We all know that that's not all that you're dealing with. We want these books to open up into networks of connections of every sort. all the different sorts of connections between things. We want to be there, to be accessible, and to be easy to traverse, to find the next thing. This is because we want to enable exploration, easy exploration, click of a button exploration, because that leads to discovery, and that ultimately leads to increasing the meaning of the objects, which means the meaning of the culture itself. This, for example, has very little meaning to anybody unless you also know, as generally we do, some of this web of connection, who it is, what role it's played in the history of art, how it came to be, and the role of David in the various religions, and how it ripples through the culture and through knowledge and how it has affected people. The more of these connections that we know, the more this thing means. Its meaning is in its connections. Without any connections, it is literally meaningless. So meaning is a matter of relationships and connections. In fact, meaning is not simply some vague set of connections. It's meanings that matter. And mattering is always something that pertains to a community. Mattering is not just the connections, but why we care about those connections. And we care about them as individuals, but caring and mattering is always a community activity. We care within a community, things matter to us within a community, we're able to talk about it. If we cannot talk about what matters to us to our community, then we are very alienated from our community. Communities are held together by a sense of what matters, which is very good news for libraries, whether they are public or they are dealing with the community that is a university, because libraries are at the heart of what matters to that community. And this, I think, is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for increasing the value of libraries and preserving the library culture that matters so much to all of us. So it's an opportunity because before the internet, the basic process was very clear, very simple. People would come to the library, they would find what they wanted, which is not a simple thing. It's not a simple transaction. Libraries and librarians are very good at helping people find what they want. Once they get it, they take it out and they read it at home by themselves. And then inevitably, if it matters to them, they have a conversation with the people who they know, their family, their co-workers, whatever. And so a network of meaning gets developed. This is a set of people who talk about what they are reading or reviewing and what matters to them, and helping one another to make sense of it. This is sense-making. This is how we understand what it is that we are doing. It's how culture develops. And in the old days, which is like 10 years ago, this always was done, almost always was done outside, physically outside of the library. The library could not affect it once the books left, or the DVDs, so forth, left the library. Now, of course, this is being done much more because it's being done online, so the connections are much easier to make. Finding people to talk is much easier, and the libraries are online too. So this is an enormous opportunity, in my view, for libraries to reassert themselves into the process of meaning making, of enabling the objects of culture that are entrusted to libraries, making them matter more, to increase their value by increasing their meaning, and having them, having them matter more. This, especially for a university library, I think, is absolutely crucial, because our cultures in general have falsely concluded that knowledge lives in the heads of experts and in the books they write. This is where knowledge is. One of the things that the internet is showing us, I believe, is that knowledge, in fact, lives in networks. It does not live in the books or the heads of experts. If that's the only place that knowledge lived, then it would be of meager value. In fact, knowledge has always, now more than ever, lives in the connections among people who care about the same things and are talking about them in different ways. And so if you want to know about any field, whether it's systems biology or political economics or whatever, the way to know about it is to find a network and follow the links, and we hope at some point engage. And And following those links, you'll see an idea presented, quite possibly by an expert from your university, quite possibly in a very formal way, or in a very informal way. And that idea will link out to other ideas that the academic thinks are important. And lots of things will link back in and tell you what somebody else thinks about this idea. And so this is where scholarship happens. It is where learning happens. It is where knowledge lives, in these networks. So if you want, in my view, if you want to have a smarter faculty, a smarter student body, you must do whatever you can to enable these knowledge networks to spring up and to become richer and richer and richer. And libraries are in a remarkable position to do this. So I want to talk about 3 ways forward in this. And these are just, this is pretty random. There are so many ways. I look forward over the course of this conference hearing about more and more ways of doing this sort of thing. Here's 3. And I'm sorry, I don't know the technical level of you, so you'll have to look forward if I'm going on too long with this, okay? And then I'll try to move faster. So the first is to think about libraries as platforms. And when I say platform, I'm actually thinking about application programming interfaces or APIs. So how many of you are, because I'm about to explain what an API is, how many of you do not need me to explain what an API is? Please raise your hands. So that's a respectable showing, but I'm going to explain. Sorry. And it's going to be the worst explanation you ever heard. Okay, so by a platform, what I mean is that there's some set of contents and metadata, information about the information, of course, that you have. And it's in lots of different forms, lots of different databases and the like. These are just some of them. There's much, much more, as you know. So let's say somebody wants to write an application. They want to write a service. You need to provide a service to your users. And in this case, it's an online catalog. And so the way that you do it with an API is you use the API as an abstraction layer, as a translator, so that your application can make requests of data from the data at the bottom there without having to know anything about what particular database is being used or what data, every language it expects. The person writing the application doesn't have to know anything about that. All she has to know about is how to speak to the API. The API has its own language. Generally, it's an extremely simple language for making a request. So this program, when somebody clicks on Inferno, this program has to go fetch all the information from the library resources about Dante's Inferno. In this case, the person wants to know about the holdings for Inferno and wants it sorted by date. So that's how you speak to the API in this very controlled and simple language. The API does the translation, translates it into what may be very complex and idiosyncratic, unique languages for each of the data sources. The data sources respond in their own complex, idiosyncratic ways. It's the API's job to know how to interpret those and turn them into simple information blocks that the person writing the program knows how to interpret because you read the API documentation. And so that's all that APIs do. They're simply a translation layer. They mean that if you want to change your database or your catalog information, you can. And so long as you hook it up to the API so that it speaks, so that the API knows how to interpret requests and responses from it, nothing else changes. None of the services running on top have to change. They're just talking to the API. It's like ordering from a menu in a restaurant. You don't have to know that since you were there last, you ordered an omelet. You go back a week later, it's a new chef, it's a new stove, it's like a new recipe. You don't need to know any of that. All you have to say to the customer is, I'd like an omelet. And you get an omelet. That's what APIs do. So APIs are incredibly powerful at doing this. It makes them a really good infrastructure for libraries because when you have complex information flows, as libraries do, an API provides a stable interface for all the programs and applications and services that you're running on top of. But that's not why I'm talking about it. The reason I'm talking about it is that at the same time, modern APIs, that application and the API, communicate over the web, which means that any site, anywhere on the planet, And since I was talking with NASA 2 days ago, I will say, not even on the planet, any site that communicates using the web can make requests to your API just as if it were your own developers making requests to the API, which means lots and lots of sites now can use your library data, which helps to heal its hole in the internet. And second of all, it means that anybody who has an idea for an application can build that application just as your own staff can, and can use the data that you're making available to them just as your own staff can, which means that you are no longer responsible for thinking of everything that your users might want. If you don't have the staff, you don't have the resources to build everything your users want. But now that's okay, because anybody with some development skills can use your API to build a service that's useful for their users, even if it's just a small handful of users somewhere on Earth that you never even heard of. They will think of things that you did not think of. They will build things that you could not afford to build. So this is a way, again, of magnifying the value of libraries, of the work that you do, helping to heal this hole in the internet. So this is StackLife, which was a product of from the library edition that I directed. And I want to give it to you as an example. So StackLife is an alternative browser. In this case, somebody did a search for the book on, I have look for this book. StackLife always shows you the books in the context. The context is expressed as a stack. This is turned sideways, of course, if you read the titles. This stack represents where you would find this book on the actual physical shelves and hardware, except that it actually aggregates the 73 different libraries at hardware. You can scroll this indefinitely, and because it's digital, we don't want to just reproduce the physical, which we do, by the way. The sizes of the books represent their physical size, the thickness and the height. But we might as well allow you to see shelves that don't exist in real life. So if you click on one of these buttons, these are the library number subject headings. It will bring in a new stack of books. So click on Hispanic Americans, and you see now this book in the context of other books in that subject heading. So it's combining the familiar of the physical with the quick ability to switch that the digital gives us. So StackLife, I'm showing it to you because I'm proud of it, but also because it is simply an application, one application that's written on top of an API. The product you do not see, piece of technology, is called Library Cloud. It's open source software that manages the Harvard Library information, the metadata. And you can use it, anybody can use it. So there's Library Cloud, an application on top of it, making its request through. And if you don't like StackLife, it's not doing what you want, it's an open source project. Change it, run it against the API, and it will work. So Harvard clearly is not the only, by far not the only library that is creating a platform. This is the Digital Public Library of America. I recognize it should be not the DPLA, but the DPLNA, but Arte Americano is what we need to do. So this is a public online library that runs absolutely on top of the platform. All of its data, all of the data that you see on its homepage is coming from through its platform, which means that other people can write applications, and so people have, and the DPLA has a little app store, sort of an Apple App Store, but open source, which is a pretty big difference, where you can browse now for applications that other people have made. And the head of the DPLA, Dan Cohen, says that they get 10 times as many hits through their API that they get through people coming to the site and browsing, which makes him very proud and happy. It means that the value of their collection is being used around the world by people he doesn't even know. And that's great. That's exactly what we want to have happen. One of the interesting, I think, important things that pursuing the catalog approach does, it means that you are no longer responsible. So you are no longer solely responsible for determining your library's future. Because you're going to think about what your users need, and you're going to build it, of course. But you are not the only one now who's responsible for thinking about your users' needs. Others can, and they can build what they need or what they think your users' needs or other users' need. So libraries are no longer solely responsible for the heavy burden of figuring out what their future will be. No, with a platform approach, the entire world can participate in figuring out what the future of libraries will be. Spreading library culture, enriching it, finding new ways to use it. Okay, so the second way forward is to learn from one another, which is always a good thing. So here's Amazon. You're doing some research on the warriors of the billion. This is the returns list. It's a very reasonable list. Pretty good job. But go down, and you're about 7 figures down before you get an action figure for one of the movies. A little plastic figure. That's probably not what researchers are looking for. And if you go down a few more in this list, you are at the waltzing women, elegant sex, red, black, party stilettos. Pretty clearly not what the researcher is looking for, but very likely a good recommendation, good in the sense that some number of people click on it and buy it. That's Amazon's definition of good. It's not exactly the librarian's definition of good. So I want to switch examples somewhat. This is, this is an Amazon page for what apparently is a pretty good book about freedom. And Amazon now shows you people who bought this also bought. And again, it's a somewhat reasonable list. It's a set of paintings. But then you're getting art stickers. And again, this is Amazon showing you a set of recommendations that work, but work in the sense of being the lowest recommendation of least resistance. They don't care what you buy. They just want to buy something. And so this is a list that is of the items you're most likely to buy. And they work really hard at making this list work that way. They're good at it. Okay, so if you now go to a librarian and return the book and say, I really like this book, what else do you have? The librarian will make some recommendations that would be, things like this, sort of Amazon-like, not quite as commercial. So librarian might say, you might like the movie. I don't know, it's not a bad movie. You might want to explore the work of Rivera. That would be interesting. But then the librarian is very likely to go off in some directions that are slightly more difficult. Just more different from, not the same thing, something more different but is more likely to expand your interest. So, for example, did you know that there's a pretty obscure opera, or you just wrote a book that is based upon it? You might be interested in that. That's not the least resistance. That's a little bit higher. Have you seen her painting of the U.S.-Mexico border? It's a little uncomfortable for Americans. But I find it really interesting. Judy Chicago, the feminist artist, she's been inspired. So the librarian will raise the resistance just enough to expand it. Because the librarian is not simply interested in having you go out with a book. The librarian wants you to go out with a book that will help you, will help you understand the world a little bit better and extend you a little bit. So very different ideas about recommendations. So that's wonderful, but how do we scale it? Well, lots of ways, but imagine, if you will, that libraries started adopting platforms, platforms. And they're on the net, of course, which means that they're able to share them. So I left out a little of stack. The shading of books, how deep the color blue is, indicates its relevance to the community. That is, in this case, the Harvard community. It's a measure of how often it's been taken out by faculty, students, and grad students, how often it's been assigned in classes, how many copies are held in the various libraries, how many times it's been put on reserve, and the like. There's more there. We did a quick and dirty job of compiling this when we wrote the software. Nevertheless, it turns out that it's a pretty useful measure, that you can sort by this community relevance. And if you are exploring an area, it's actually good to know, well, here are the main works that the Harvard community is reading. So that's really helpful. But there's also a terrible problem, because this means that we are continually pointing people to the works that are most often read within the community, which means the long tail is getting longer and longer, shallower and shallower. We keep sending people back to the popular books. So from the beginning, actually, the inspiration behind Stack Life and Library Cloud was the idea that, okay, community relevance is a good thought. It is, in fact, useful. But imagine that when you see this list sorted by Harvard community relevance, you could also be shown a list of the works that are relevant to other communities that are not showing up on Harvard's list. What is it that the Berlin Library is reading about this case genetics that Harvard is not? That would be really interesting. We can do all sorts of things when we have multiple platforms and the data behind them. So I want to say one more thing about this, which is how do we get its scores? Because I know publishing usage scores is a very risky thing, and there's been a huge amount of opposition to it. And I think we actually figured out a good way of doing it, which we call stack score. So the blue represents the stack score of the books. Stack score is the number between 1 and 100 that is computed based upon looking at the set of factors, like how often it's taken out, how often it's put on return, and so forth. Okay? So, are you unable to hear most of what I'm saying? Because I notice enormous variance in how I... You cannot hear? You have not been able to hear? Because I'll go back to the beginning, I'll do it. Okay. Okay. Well, one person can hear me. Good enough for me. Thank you. Okay, so we look at the set of factors, how often it's taken out, and so forth, put on reserve, imagine a longer list, and we assign percentage points to them, and then we normalize this across the score of 1 to 100. So if you know that a book has a stack score of 82 or 57 or whatever, there is, we believe, no way of going back from that number to find out who took the book out. It's a highly computed number. So here are the advantages of stack score. First of all, it's private because it's computed. I talked to privacy experts at Harvard about this, and they seem satisfied that, yeah, 87 score is not going to give away anybody's personal information. It's easy to compare between organizations, between libraries. Let's say New York Public Library says the highest thing for us are readers' ratings and librarian recommendations. That's what counts for us. That's what we think makes something relevant. Good. They can create their own stack score. They can weight things that way. That's their business. But they come out of it with a number that's normalized between 1 and 100 so we can compare them. So at Harvard, it's how many professors have taken it out, and New York Public Library, it's how many readers have given it 5 stars. Those aren't really compatible, but it's up to each community to decide what makes something relevant, what's the metric. So I've been pushing for libraries to adopt stack scores so that we can start comparing usage and learning from one another. And here's another very simple, So this is the awesome box that was invented by a couple of developers in our lab. And it could not be simpler. The idea is you have a box where people return books. You put the awesome box next to it. The awesome box has a sign that says, was this book awesome? If so, put it here. There is no definition of awesome on purpose. Just, was this book awesome? And if you are coming in with your book, I can show you a video of this action. That's Matt Phillips, one of the inventors. Put some books in the regular book, but the book that is awesome goes in the awesome box. That's it. It lowers the bar to getting a user recommendation. This then gets posted, the cumulative numbers get posted on the website we provide for free, of course. But it can also now be a factor in stack score, books being read. get put into the awesome box should count for more. Okay, so that's learning from one another across platforms. And the third way forward is by making room for more meaning. So I'm about to talk about linked data. Once again, if you do not need an explanation, yet another explanation of linked data, raise your hands. Okay, you're going to get yet another, and this will be the fastest and worst explanation of linked data ever. Okay, so we've had this idea now for a long time, not just in libraries. We have an object, and we provide a shadow object that goes along with it, which is the metadata. And the metadata is structured in form. It's marked data, or whatever. This is how we, obviously not just libraries, but we've had this idea that real things carry with them a shadow object that contains their metadata. And we all know that there are tremendous problems with doing things this way. Having somebody else decide what matters for a record, what goes on the record, we know that we lose information that way. We know that there are cultural biases this way. So linked data addresses this problem by taking the radical step of throwing out the records. Does not throw out the information in the record, but throws out the concept of the record, and it instead breaks down the information into a series of what are called triplets, sort of little molecules of information, each expressing something about the book in this case. And you can get gigantic, messy networks of linked data that trail off into information that's not exactly about the book. I made all this up, so don't pay too much attention to it. But you're also capturing all of the information that was in the record, and that's crucial. But you're also getting more. And then you can, in fact, mash it up with other records from other libraries or from other institutions, other piles of data. And perhaps, maybe, one of the points is that maybe not only are you making more information available because you're not confining it to relatively few fields on the record, but you may also discover relationships that otherwise you might not. For example, the Inferno is part of the trilogy, and the work by Ron Sposh is also part of the trilogy. So maybe there's something about the number 3 and the aftermath. Not a great insight, probably wrong. The data is there. So having done that, you can now mesh it up with data from all around the world on every conceivable topic, from geopolitics to meteorology. In fact, this would allow us to finally ask the question in a simple way. Just ask the mashed up data. We can find out if romantic poets tended to have been born in places that have a lot of rain. It might be interesting to find that out. So linked data is really hard, it's expensive, it's difficult technology, at least at this point. There are some important projects underway that will help. So I'm not going to talk about these, I just want to list them, but one is BitFree from the Library of Congress, LibHub from Zafira, a consulting firm that's working with public libraries. The linked data for Libraries project, which I'm very excited about, it's a Cornell project. They brought in Harvard, my old group Harvard, and Stanford, and it is trying to build linked data for research libraries that includes not just bibliographic data, but other information that is of use to researchers. So it's a really, really good project. The DPLA has a project going on. Wikidata, which is feeding Wikipedia, is a linked data environment that is of tremendous value. And OCLC is building a library knowledge graph, which is a linked data representation of WorldCat, whatever else they can find. They say it would be open. I wish they be free. So I'd be really excited. Okay, so those are 3 ways. I want to very briefly talk about optimism, because I don't want to be too positive about this. So the first is that the world of linked data, the world in which knowledge exists in networks that spill out of every book, that's messy. That's really messy. So one of the ways of approaching this is to clean up mess. We can do that. Librarians have been cleaning up messy information for a long time. But that also, in organizing something, we also throw out a whole bunch of information. We lose a lot of information. One of the ways of looking at this is to say, well, okay, here's what we already accommodate. There are already up to 10 Library of Congress classifications, so we recognize that things can be on multiple shelves, and projects like Stacklight, certainly not only Stacklight, enable you to browse those shelves. That's great. But the number of shelves that Frida Kahlo should be on is indefinite, because it's a question of what she and her work means to someone. And nobody can know what it's going to mean to someone. So we need to be able to have her on as many shelves as possible, connected to as many other objects, things in the world, and ideas as we can, represent people's ways of thinking about things and what matters to them. The problem is that order doesn't scale. It's very hard to get order up. So the Library of Congress classifies 7,000 books a week. 7,000 books a week is a lot, but it is nothing on the web. 7,000 things a week? You can't find a site that is dealing with only 7,000 new things. It does not scale. Order doesn't scale. But messiness scales. A mess can get as big as it wants. And if you want to include everything and every idea and every piece of meaning and every connection, you have to let it get messy and sort it on the way out. You build the biggest mess that you can, because messiness not only scales, messiness scales meaning. That's why we have messes. So scale the meaning and then provide ways for people to explore and extract and add to the meaning on the way out. Second obstacle is the huge one, which is technology is difficult and expensive. So to move into a platform world, I actually am somewhat optimistic, but I'm not sure how we'll get there. So the least likely way is that people write open source platforms. The Harvard Library Cloud is one, free to look at it. Other people are writing others. So they're open source, and libraries decide to install them. It's difficult to install and maintain, and it's a big investment even in software. So that's the least likely. Another possibility is the vendors providing the back-end library systems, integrated library systems, that they decide to get serious about adding APIs. And not just APIs, but APIs that interoperate, allow you to share information across platforms. We'll see. We'll take a lot of pressure. Third possibility that I'm quite excited about is a cloud-based approach. Somebody, I don't know, built an open source cloud-based ILS providing back-end library services that's reliable and robust and very, very cheap. And so libraries start using that. As more libraries start using cloud service with permission, their data can be aggregated and made available through platforms with permission, especially around privacy. And fourth, which we're seeing it, the United Kingdom is exploring building a country-wide library platform to provide the cloud-based services, but also to enable the sort of aggregation of metadata. That aggregation of metadata at the national level is great for measuring efficiency. It's also awesome for allowing communities to learn from what matters to one community and how it matters to one. This is everything costs money. There's nothing free. I would argue that APIs actually help drive down some of the costs of library maintenance, but it requires initial investment and some specialized skills. All of these options have costs. But it seems to me that we have to do it because we are all committed to preserving the library culture, the culture that libraries have preserved for centuries. Increasingly alone, off the net, we need to make this. There's no choice but to enable this culture to continue to be enriched. And there's nobody but libraries who can do it. There is no one. There just isn't. There's no other institution that is going to do this. And so libraries, from my point of view, must must take up this task, not necessarily by any means the way that I'm suggesting. But this is the task that we all face, and nobody is going to do it for us. Library culture will vanish from the internet unless we find ways to keep it there. So if not libraries, then libraries are in a unique position to do this and to further advance themselves as centers of meaning for their community. Not just for traditional research, but for the elaboration of research, the understanding and appropriation of research, the effect and impact of research, to help build networks of scholars and scholarly material and readers around the world who also participate. This is something that libraries now can do and hope will. So, I said I addressed this question sort of, kind of, and I am going to. Revolution or evolution? But, people be a little, but I actually think neither. I think, for me, the best way of thinking about what's going on and the opportunity that provides for us for the networking of meaning and knowledge is that it enables libraries to become what they always have been, to achieve more of the essence of what they are, do so more quickly, to be more engaged with their community at a deeper level, to enable that community to discover more of what matters to them, to understand and appropriate more of their own culture, and to expose that culture to the rest of the world, which also can learn from it by building connections, networks of meaning around things that matter. Thank you.